Welcome to Adam About. In this video I'm going to be talking about how to shock the water in your hot tub. It's super important and I'm going to explain how to do it in 7 easy steps. It's another glorious day here in sunny Plymouth, and today I'm going to be explaining how to shock the water in your inflatable hot tub. It's quite easy to do, but it's also really important. The hot tub I've got here is the Lay-Z-Spa Santorini. I'm trying to get this set up ready for its first use. I've inflated it nicely, I've filled it with water, and now I'm ready to start treating the water. The very first thing you do is you need to shock it. That helps keep it clean and safe for everyone to use. I've previously made a number of other videos that talk about hot tub chemicals. In this particular one, I'm really going to drill down into the topic of shocking water. Some people have struggled with it, so I wanted to expand on the topic and really get into it. For complete transparency, Clearwater have been kind enough to support this channel and have given me some free chemicals that I'm going to use in this video. However, all the views shown here are my own, and really I'm just trying to explain how to use them. So let's crack on and get into it. First things first, what do we mean by shocking the hot tub water? Essentially, we're going to be adding a large amount of chlorine, so it raises the chlorine levels very quickly. It's known as a shock dosage and it's designed to sanitize the water. I cannot overemphasize how important it is to shock the water when you first fill it. If you don't, it's going to end up going green and cloudy and slimy, and that's not what you want. And it means you're going to have to keep on replacing the water on a regular basis. Shocking the water helps keep it clean and safe for use. When chlorine is added to the water in a shock dose like this, it does several things. Firstly, it kills any organic compounds in there, things like bacteria and algae that can accumulate in the water. Without this, they will just continue to grow. Secondly, if you've been using your hot tub, it's very good at removing any contaminants that have got in the water, things like makeup or deodorant, this kind of things that have come off people's skin. And finally, if you keep on maintaining the chlorine levels, it helps do those things continuously, and that helps keep the water clean and safe for ongoing use for everybody. So when should you shock the water? As I've explained earlier, it's very important when you first fill it with water, and that's also true if you empty it and refill it. The other time you should shock the water is if it becomes a little bit dirty. What I mean by that, if it's become a bit discoloured or a bit slimy, or worst case scenario, even a bit smelly. This is typically caused by the chlorine levels dropping low. If you put a shock dosage back on the water, there's a fighting chance you can clear that up, and it means you won't have to refill it with fresh water. It's also worth considering shocking the water in your hot tub if you've had lots of use out of it, even more so if that's been with lots of different people. Even normal use of the hot tub actually depletes the chlorine levels that are in it, so if you've been using it a lot, the fastest and most effective way to get it back up to normal is by using a shock dosage. It's worthwhile noting that you should raise the temperature of the hot tub water to at least 20 degrees centigrade before adding your shock dosage. This means that if you filled it up for the first time, you need to get that heater on and leave it a few hours, get the temperature up before adding it. That way you're ensuring that the chlorine granules dissolve properly. In order to shock the water, you're going to need a few things, the most important of which are some chlorine granules like these ones from Clearwater I have here. This comes in a handy size pack with a secure safety lid to make sure kids can't get into it. It's very important that you use chlorine granules when you're shocking the water and not chlorine tablets. They're designed for slow release for day-to-day maintenance. I've got a separate video on those tablets, where it's the granules that really give a rapid release into the water and really give it a good shock. You'll also need some test strips like these ones I've got here from Clearwater. They allow you to test the water and make sure you know you've put the right amount of chlorine in. It's important that you wait at least a couple of hours, or ideally even overnight, after you've put the chlorine in before you do the test. That way it's had sufficient time to mix and you know that you're testing the levels correctly. When I first bought my hot tub, I purchased a Clearwater starter kit. It's handy because it comes with both the chlorine granules and the dip test strips that you'll need. It also has other chemicals in there to help you do the initial setup and ongoing maintenance. Finally, you'll need a teaspoon for measuring out the granules and a large jug or bucket in order to mix the granules in hot water before you add it to the hot tub. I use a glass 1 litre measuring jug like this. It's very important that you use the right amount of chlorine to shock the water. Your hot tub should come with some paperwork that explains the specific amount. If you're using the Clearwater granules like I am, then it requires 20 grams of chlorine for every 1,000 litres of water in your hot tub. 1 teaspoon is about 5 grams, so that's equivalent to 4 teaspoons. If you have a Lay-Z-Spa hot tub like me, then Lay-Z-Spa have a table on their website that shows every model how much chlorine is required by grams and how many teaspoons that equates to. I'll put up on screen a table with the more popular models from Lay-Z-Spa. Feel free to pause the video to look up the amount of chlorine you need. For this Lay-Z-Spa Santorini that I have here, because it's quite a large hot tub that takes up to 7 people, it's got 1,200 litres in there in total. It requires 24 grams of chlorine, which equates to 5 tablespoons worth. For safety, I always recommend adding the chlorine to about half a litre of warm water. Also, always make sure you're out of the wind when you're doing this, because the last thing you want is chlorine granules blowing about and perhaps getting in your eyes. Generally, it's recommended that you always add chemicals to water rather than water to chemicals. This is to make sure it's diluted from the word go. It's best to give this mixture of chlorine and water a really good stir in the jug before you add it into the hot tub. The last thing you want is undissolved chlorine granules just sitting on the floor of your hot tub. Now that you've got your shock dose mixed and ready to pour into the hot tub, you need to make sure the hot tub is ready. So get the lid off, make sure the water's up to the correct level, make sure the temperature's up to at least 20 degrees C. Then it's important to either turn on your hydrojets or air jets, whatever you've got, to make sure the water's circulating nicely before you pour in the mix. Then carefully pour the mixture of chlorine and water into the hot tub, ensuring that it circulates nicely. And that's it, the first stage is done, you've shocked the water. Now that you've added the chlorine to the water, it's a little bit of a waiting game. I would recommend leaving it overnight. Clearwater themselves recommend leaving it at least 24 hours. After this time has passed, you can use the dip strips in order to test the water and see the result that you've had. With a bit of luck, you'll have added the right amount of chlorine, because obviously you've followed the instructions properly. However, if it's still a little bit low after you've waited, then I recommend adding a little bit more, probably just 1 teaspoon worth of chlorine, then waiting before testing again. If the chlorine levels are too high, one of the easiest ways to lower it is to take the lid off the hot tub and run the air bubbles. If you do this for about 20 minutes, the exposure to ultraviolet light and the air bubbles themselves will help reduce the chlorine levels. If you've really overdone it and it's showing an extremely high amount, the more drastic method is to drain some water from your hot tub, say about 1/4 of the water, and then refill up that 1/4 of water with fresh, clean water. Once you've got the chlorine levels right, there's just a couple more stages you need to do before the hot tub is ready to use, and that's about getting the total alkalinity to the correct level and also the pH levels right. I've got other videos that cover those topics. Because chlorine is a chemical, it's important that you take care when using and storing these granules. When mixing, always try and do this out the wind or indoors to make sure it doesn't get spread anywhere. When mixing the chlorine with water, it's always best to add the chlorine to the water and not the other way around, and do this indoors or out the wind somewhere so it doesn't blow everywhere. Most importantly of all, never add any chlorine to the hot tub while people are in it, either directly or from a pre-mixed jug. Take your time with this, there's no need to rush. If you do have any accidents with it, sort that first before continuing. Always wash your hands when you finish with the chlorine, just in case you've got some on your skin. And when you store it, make sure it's out of the way of pets or children. Ideally, you want some chlorine tablets with a safety cap like this to make sure kids can't get in it. So that's my guide to shocking hot tub water. I hope you found it useful. If you do have any questions, please put them in the comments section below and I'll do my best to answer them. This is the first video in a short series explaining how to use Clearwater chemicals to both set up and maintain your hot tub water to keep it clean and safe for use by everybody. Keep an eye out for the rest of the videos in this series. If you did find this video helpful in any way, please consider liking it and subscribing to my channel, as it really helps me out. But that's it for today. Thank you very much. Bye bye.